Your problem is not technology. The problem is you.
Then help us change.
I cannot change your nature.
This planet is dying. The human race is killing it.
So you've come here to help us?
No.
You said you came to save us.
I said I came to save the Earth.
You came to save the Earth. From us. You came to save the Earth. From us.
If the Earth dies, you die. If you die, the Earth survives.
We can change. We could still turn things around.
We've watched, we've waited and hoped that you would change.
Please.
It's reached the tipping point. We have to act.
Please.
We'll undo the damage you've done and give the Earth a chance to begin again.
Don't do that. Please. We could change. We can change.
The decision is made. The process has begun.
Oh, God.
Happy heresies and welcome to the Desert of the Real. Hope you dug that clip from the remake of The Day the Earth Stood Still, with Keanu Reeves playing Klaatu. Are we humans no more than consuming viruses, as Agent Smith states in The Matrix? Are we really a scourge upon Gaia, and she just needs to scrape us off her skin? Or do we just need to reach into our lizard brains and become like the beasts and bask in the circle of life with Simba and Mufasa? Throw feces at imaginary elves and eat fleas from our hair?
Look, Simba.
As always, both sides are wrong. The solution, Klaatu, is in Gnostic and Hermetic thinking. You see, we humans are indeed aliens to this cosmos, strangers in a strange land, but that doesn't make us invaders. We have a role, and it's a special one. We are different than the gods and the animals. We are that place where the fallen angel meets the rising ape. We are in between heaven and earth, so we can mediate and harmonize heaven and earth. That is our gift. In fact, that's our sacred responsibility, to be the caretakers of the cosmos, as Gary Lockman calls those who embrace Hermes and Sophia.
Who am I? That's the real question, isn't it? Who am I? Who are you? What other questions are there? What other questions are there, really? If you want to understand the universe, embrace the universe, the door to the universe is you.
Speaking of Hermes, in the Nag Hammadi library, he tells Asclepius, and it happened this way because of the will of God, that men be better than the gods, since, indeed, the gods are immortal, but men alone are both immortal and mortal. Therefore, man has become akin to the gods, and they know the affairs of each other with certainty. The gods know the things of men, and men know the things of the gods. And I am speaking about men, Asclepius, who have attained learning and gnosis. But about those who are more vain than these, it is not fitting that we say anything base, since we are divine and are introducing holy matters.
No matter what anybody tells you, words and ideas can change the world.
So don't listen to the woke or right reactionaries. One side saying we are the carbon that needs to be eliminated, and the other who thinks that the planet is our Jehovah-given toilet. We are the caretakers of the cosmos, we of the broken places and veterans of 1,000 psychic wars. We mediate heaven and earth.
If we can't protect the Earth, you can be damn well sure we'll avenge it.
Both the woke and right reactionaries are just trying to find a reality that suits their corrupted souls, all under the programming of Yaldi-Baldi and his rapey angels. Sure, the world is a terrible place, but the task is to redeem it by unleashing its light instead of taking advantage of a situation, akin to becoming prison guards in a penitentiary.
Klaatu!
As Jason Horsley wrote, Reality, like God, has many counterfeits but no substitutes. No one saves their soul while trying to secure a place in hell, this world. As Jason further writes, making the world a better, more comfortable and luxurious place is the nihilist's answer to the death of God.
This is perfection. I have created heaven on earth.
No, as Hermes and Sophia would say, it's about renewing the fallen cosmos, creating better than the creator gods, and honoring the miracle that is every living thing.
What we do in life echoes in eternity.
The mystery of life isn't a problem to solve, but a reality to experience.
Welcome to Aeon by Gnostic Radio, here at the virtual Alexandria. My name is Miguel Connor, your Pompadour of Gnosis, and another caretaker of the cosmos like you, writing my own gospel and living my own myth. We don't take prisoners but liberate them. We're running with those searching for the truth and avoiding those who have found it. Where hope dies, imagination must live.
Train yourself to let go of everything you fear to lose.
Please allow me to reward thee with a doubleheader, twice that Gnosis, as we prepare to face another bloody year. Most diviners and those with common sense claim that 2024 is going to be a hard year for the collective consciousness. So yes, Captain, my captain, a doubleheader, full for everyone, as a gift.
I'm going to grant you your greatest wish. I'm going to show you a world without sin.
First, we have the pleasure of hosting Mawiyah Kai EL-Jamah Bomani to discuss her book, Conjuring the Calabash, Empowering Women with Hoodoo Spells and Magic. You'll love her mysticism. The topic may seem outside the wheelhouse of Aeon Bite, but as you will see, Hoodoo and African animism are key to my Elvis book, and thus the renewal of the American dream, which really is a central theme of my work. Then we'll pivot to David Lee and his new book, Primordial Chaos. David will provide a summary of the evolution of chaos magic and how it's going in the digital age and this Philip-K-Dick world. And also a lot of cool revelations on how you can live a magical life.
Klaatu!
Voodoo magic and chaos magic, two emerging spiritual tech in the last few generations that can be part of your toolbox to keep being, yes, a caretaker of the cosmos.
Freedom. To most, it is an idea. An abstract thought that pertains to control. That's not freedom. That's independence. Freedom is riding wild over untamed land with no notion any moment exists beyond the one you are living.
Again, full for everyone. So if you find value, please support. 2023 was amazing for traffic, but terrible for support. And I can't do it without you.
No way!
As we get to the end of my trivel, let me quote from the Corpus Hermeticum 8, which highlights the theme of the show and our place in this terra damnata. It goes, O Father, I have been steadfast through God. I now see not with the eyes, but by the operation of spiritual energy in the powers. I am in heaven, in earth, in water, in the air. I am in living creatures and plants. I am in the womb, before the womb, after the womb. I am present everywhere. And as Philip-K-Dick wrote, the true measure of a man is not his intelligence or how high he rises in this freak establishment. No, the true measure of a man is this: How quickly can he respond to the needs of others, and how much of himself he can give? No single thing abides, and all things are fucked up. A man is an angel that has gone deranged.
I was pressed down like coal. I suffered. That's what an angel is. Dust pressed into a diamond by the weight of this world.
Sorry, woke and right reactionaries. Your time is over. The world has suffered enough, and enough innocent beings have been abused. We of the broken places know the score and understand the solutions. We embrace this saying of Jesus from the Gospel of Thomas that sets it all right. Here it is. If your leaders say to you, "Look, the Father's kingdom is in the sky," then the birds of the sky will precede you. If they say to you, "It is in the sea," then fish will precede you. Rather, the Father's kingdom is within you and it is outside you. When you know yourselves, then you will be known, and you will understand that you are children of the living Father. But if you do not know yourselves, then you live in poverty, and you are the poverty.
Look, as sentient meat, however illusory our identities are, we craft those identities by making value judgments. Everybody judges, all the time. Now, you got a problem with that, you're living wrong.
What's scented meat?
Led us to our fantastic doubleheader.
Klaatu, Verada. Okay then. That's it.
I didn't have the heart to tell her there is no heaven to go to, because we're in it already. We're in hell too. They coexist, right beside each other. And God is the Lamb. Looking back, there were two journeys. One was filled with danger and death and despair. The other, adventure and wonder. I was on the latter, and I loved it.
Wait, grab that shoulder.
I didn't know enough to know they would collide. I didn't know enough to know how cruel and uncaring this world can be. The world doesn't care if you die. It won't listen to your screams. If you bleed on the ground will drink it. It doesn't care that you're cut. I told myself, when I meet God, it will be the first thing I ask Him. Why make a world of such wonder and fill it with monsters? Why make flowers and then snakes to hide beneath them? What purpose does the tornado serve? Then it hit me. He didn't make it for us.
This is the Aeon Bide interview, and with us, we definitely have the pleasure of having Mawiyah Kai EL-Jamah Bomani. Mawiyah, thank you very much for coming on the show.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Pleasure is all ours. And with us, too, we've got the Moondog Vance. Vance, how are you doing?
Oh, I'm fine. Computer's doing fine, too. With our subject tonight, I always think of that thing, see the man. What man? Man with the power.
Awesome. Well, Mawiyah, we are here to discuss a book that I really enjoyed, Conjuring the Calabash, and empowering women with Hoodoo Spells and Magic. So before we get into that, perhaps tell the audience a little bit about yourself and your journey into becoming a superhero.
Well, I'm born and raised in New Orleans, Louisiana. From a very, very young age, I could see spirits. And so with that, my mom, being in New Orleans, the culture itself, there's a lot of that overlap of, you go to church, but you also go see a hoodoo doctor. You go see a Voodoo priestess. So, it's not an abnormal thing to happen there. So one of the things that she did say, she said, you can't tell the nuns that, because I was in Catholic school, right? She's like, you just can't say that to them. But we'll handle that at home. We'll talk about, how to maneuver that, at a young age, you just thinking, what do they want with me, that kind of thing. And so from then on, it was just, I guess that was my beginning of my learning and meeting other people and having other teachers come into my life to really sort of get me honed in on how to, approach the magic and then still live a normal life. And so I've just been writing plays, and all of those things have a lot to do with folklore and even my poetry. And then I just, during the pandemic, everybody's at home. I thought, okay, I'm going to do this. I'm going to write this book, because I'm dealing with a lot of people. And so I think that, and doing a lot of divination work, they would be helped. A lot more people would be helped if I can get this book out, So that was pretty much, the journey.
Awesome. Yeah, I enjoyed the book, and God, I really love New Orleans. God, I love New Orleans. Non-summer New Orleans. Let me put that caveat right there. January, February, I really love New Orleans. It's
yes.
Energy there is like nothing else in the world.
No, like nowhere else, right?
No. And yeah, I want to unpack more, but God, just in November, I did this. I did the Route 66. I drove from Illinois to Memphis. And then we drove down to Clarksdale to see Robert Johnson in the Crossroads. So
okay.
That's what I want to talk about more. But before we do that, for the audience that might not know, could you explain what is hoodoo?
Yeah, a lot of people, it all depends on where you live. They would have a lot of different answers for that. But I know, growing up in New Orleans, one of the things that we were always well versed in is, a lot of the African traffic that came in, right, from the enslavement. And there were different people from different areas, and those people blending their ideas, their spirituality, the things that they could bring with them as far as their knowledge, and trying to sort of mix that in with what they already had there, because some of the herbs and the roots, those things weren't there with them. And so that mixed with Native American ideas, European ideas, a form of magic that worked also as, liberation magic. I like to say healing. They didn't have doctors for them, a lot of times. So you had to depend on a midwife or a root worker or a conjurer to do those things. Relationship wise, all those things try to, help you cope with the trauma of enslavement, but the trauma of also maybe of your family being torn apart. So, it is a blending of all of those sensibilities, African at its very core, but also Native American and European presence in that, because, the travels and the being in this new place, this new environment, you have to sort of pull what you can with already there in that area. So it is just that blending of that. But I always like to tell people it is at its very core liberation magic, because that's the main reason why it sprouted. This urge to be free, and if not a physical freedom, at least for a small part of time, this mental liberation.
Oh, love it. And so you would say could we say this spirituality is animistic, perhaps? Would that be a category? It deals more with spirits and nature and all that?
Yes, you definitely could.
Great. Yeah, and I love that liberation theory. And again, a backstory of why I did the Route 66 is I'm writing a book on spiritual biography on Elvis. And obviously, people are still debating, was Elvis appropriating what he was doing? But obviously, it's true that he grew up in extreme poverty back in the 40s. It didn't matter what you were, black, white, Lithuanian Jewish communities in Mississippi. Everybody was
right.
Especially in Mississippi, it was bad. But he was, and of course, he was extremely influenced by Black gospel, the blues, again, all that. And he always said, look, the Black people really understand about being homeless, about being cast in this world, about yearning for a home beyond home. and they really understand, and he loved tapping into this energy because it was an energy, like you said, of freedom, of being able to rise, to escape. And he thought it belonged to white people, black, it belonged to the world. People don't realize that that was part of the magic of Elvis, that and of course he went to black churches. It was flipped because when he would go to church, he had to sit at the back with the white people while the black people got, the first 20 rows but he did, he dated black women. Cops almost killed him once for daring. So I want people to know, especially as I drove through Mississippi and I was in Memphis and in Clarksville, I was like, it's like I want to tell people this energy that Elvis and Robert Johnson and so many people tap down to, this might heal our country. And I'm not exaggerating and I'm not deluded.
No.
I feel we need to tap into this ancient force of longing and these ancient gods and so forth. Would you agree with that?
I do. I would definitely agree with that. And it reminds me of, studying back in the earlier parts of New Orleans when, you had this blending of all these different people, and you had Italian communities come in there, and they were working together with these African Americans, doing these jobs in the service industry. And so they're blending together this whole idea of St. Joseph's Day, right? And even now today, there still is that blending of that St. Joseph's Day, using of the olive oil, using of the lucky bean, the fava bean. And so all of those blendings, those mixtures of things. So yeah, I do believe that. I think that if we can find this common ground, then we can merge those magical aspects together, right? And it makes it more powerful and more powerful force to help heal the universe, help heal all of our troubles. Yes, I do.
Well said, because again, in the 50s, when we came back from World War II and the United States was in this sort of new reality of nuclear warfare and communism and materialism, it was almost like black music was what kept teenagers, what's the word, sane. People like Elvis and B.B. King and others, they brought this, and it was like a form of therapy for the entire nation. Though there were those who were the old guard, but this sort of music and art and culture was really helpful for America to rise or survive this brave new world, which we're not doing well today.
No, we're not. I always think that a lot of times when, we are allowed to, come together, the idea is to tear us apart again, right? So, when we do merge, like with the music, and with the understanding that, there are overlaps in the things that we do. And if we use those things, to nurture each other, then we won't have all of this division. But I think that, for a lot of people, the division is what they want, you know what I'm saying? And so we just have to find a way to bring it back together, bring it back to source.
Oh, yeah, I agree with you. And I guess some people would be asking, and you do address this in your book, Conjuring Calabash, is hoodoo an open practice? Who can join and who can't? That's an internet argument, if you will.
Right. I always talk about, we all have, folk magic beginnings. We all have our folk magic, culturally. Now, when you, and I say, like, individual, like working with a deity like Lama Dama, right? If you're going to work with the energy, the spirit of Lama Dama, who, when you see her statue, she's this woman with this apron, and she has a broom and a basket on her head, and she's a very dark-skinned individual. Well, her energy is synonymous with an enslaved woman who would work in the plantation home, right? She's a woman who's long past her years of, childbearing. It was not a good experience for her, because she was a breeder, so to speak. And so she works inside this home, and she has information travel back and forth to the Maroons, the enslaved people who were able to get away and who live in the mountain areas or in the wooded areas. So an individual, the spiritual energy like Lama Dama would not be someone that everybody would gravitate towards working with, because her energy is one that is about movement of the people who have been subjugated. And so I would say, would you work with her if you're not an African American person? No, you probably would not. Now, what you could do, I always tell people, you could write a letter, you could write something and sit it and to her and burn it in a cauldron, saying, I am sorry for the, whatever, however you want to say it, your petition, your plea about what happened during the time of enslavement. That could be something that you could do the work with in terms of working with her or letting her know how you feel. But as far as doing ritual work for her, no, I would not. On the flip side, Mother Catherine Seals worked with Black people and white people alike, in New Orleans. And so her whole idea was the fact that she went to a faith healer who said that he wasn't going to work with her because she was Black. And so she said, when I have my church, I'm going to work with everybody. So that would be someone that anybody could work with. So I would always tell people, use common sense. If you feel that is not working in your favor, or that you really feel like that's not something that you want to really delve into, it doesn't speak to you, then don't do it. But there are lots of overlaps that do speak to all of us. And so we could definitely do those things. So it's always, to me, a very much a common sense thing. And, we can go into it and really read up on it and see, well, okay, I can probably do this, but maybe that won't be something that would be beneficial to me. But I could approach it a different way. Like I said, with the writing of the letter and burning it in a cauldron, which is still being very respectful. It is not appropriating, but it is being appreciative and also a comrade for the people who have suffered.
No, that makes sense. Yeah, and listen to yourself. But you also do give the warning in your book, like, if you tell somebody not to do it, there's the forbidden.
Right.
They're gonna go try what they call the Streisand effect.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
We all want. No, that makes sense. And what would you say could you briefly maybe describe what the Yoruba is, the pantheon and the spirits that encompass this tradition?
Well, Nigeria, it comes from Nigeria, but in other regions of West Africa, there's that overlap again. But the Yoruba practice itself is just dealing with the forces of nature. So all of the forces of nature have their own name. They have their own place. Being a daughter of Oya, she deals with transformation. We think about transformation and death, but not just the physical death, but moving from one stage of life to the next, that kind of death. Also, she is in charge of the winds, right? So whenever we have tornadic activity near my home, we always petition Oya, for protection. So, they're there to help assist us in our creativity. We go to Osun, they're these energies, right, that we house inside of these bodies that deify them. And we work with them, have altars for them, and we experience, all of the wonderful magic that comes from them being initiated to those systems. The reason that in writing this book is because I want more people to really start to hone in on indigenous practice that did not require initiation. The Yoruba system, there is initiations for that. There are lots of study for that, and then there are certain areas that you don't move in until you're ready for that. But with Hoodoo, it is more open in that, you don't have to have those initiations. It's regional, how you learn things, what you learn to do with things. You can trade off information with other individuals, and it is more accessible to everyone. And so that, to me, I debated for a little while if I wanted to write a book about Oya or if I wanted to do the book about Hoodoo. And I felt like the Hoodoo book would reach more people, and it would not have people feel alienated, because they were not initiates or did not know now they have the terminology and the understanding of those Yoruba principles.
No, that definitely makes sense. And what about, but they're also the goddess Osun, and I've done a show on her before. She seems to be crossing more boundaries, or what do you think? Because she is a wisdom goddess, and other people can cognate her to, Athena or Ishtar or Sophia of the Gnostic. She is
right.
Somebody that could, that's cross boundaries to other races, if you would.
Yes. Definitely, they all do. And yes, she does cross boundaries. A lot of men of all races, they navigate towards Ogun a lot of times, because of that worker energy, that anvil, that man who who's going to be out in the field and he's going to get it done. So yeah, a lot of them crossed. And that's fine. I think that the knowledge of it all, because nature is not just for one group of people.
Right.
So I think that it's important that we all, harness this understanding and open ourselves up to a deeper understanding of what, the practices of other individuals. And then that in turn gives us a deeper understanding of each other. So we're not so foreign, within our own communities, And so so I think that, Osun is a wonderful one too, because we can all relate to her energy as we always talk about her in the Yoruba culture as being this creative, this honey, this woman who just will, just excite the whole room, and help you get to where you need to be. And so it could be an excitement, sensual excitement, but it could also just be an excitement for, what's coming.
Right. Of course. I enjoyed your book. You feel your book is, men can get something out of it, or do you specifically only want women to read it?
No, I think men definitely can. I think that, one of the things I always talk about is the internet. There's a lot of, especially within the African American community now, presently, there's a lot of, just dissension between men and women. I think people get really brave on the internet, they say things that they would not say in person. And so I think, there's this energy of just lashing out against each other, And so I think the book itself will help, men, understand, a different way of approaching, or dealing with these women. And it will also help women, to feel like if they're empowered enough that they don't need to beat up on the men. They can do some of these things that they're accusing men of not doing for them, right? And a way of protection for themselves as well. And then there are still some rituals in there for men. So I think that it is a learning, all of us, right? With children, especially I have sons, I have 2 boys, and so I think everyone can come into it. They can learn a lot, and then they can share it, share that information and have a better outlook on their relationships, right? And not just romantic relationships, but just how we deal with each other on a daily basis,
Yeah. And definitely stay off Twitter if you want better relationships.
Yes, definitely. Right.
You address this in your book. Why do you think there is a divide between African American men and African American women right now?
I think that, when Trayvon Martin was killed, I think that women at that point in time, I talked to a lot of women, I did divination work for a lot of women, and they were feeling like they needed protection for themselves and their children. And they felt like they could scream as much as they want, but they felt like they needed the men to scream for them. And so that started the sort of downfall of a lot of the relationship, issues that they had. They started, trickling down from that. And then I think, as we start to, have more and more, murders and all this stuff happening, and then women started to become victims, wasn't just a male thing. It started to become women. And then there's a lot of fear, right, and anxiety. And so instead of, saying I'm tired of what's happening to me, I think for a lot of people, it's easier just to turn on each other, right? Instead of trying to enact laws and fight against the system that is oppressing you, we become the oppressors because it's safer for us. It's easier.
Yeah. You definitely need to stay united because I know I sound conspiratorial, but I have a friend, my friend Samuel Hanna, and he's part of the Black separatist movement. And I'm like, man, I don't blame you because I hate to say it, but there's a eugenics program and there are certain groups that are not going to be allowed to grow. And I know people think I'm crazy, but I believe them. And then, of course, you've got the evidence. Before everybody knew about the Tulsa massacre, I was writing articles, and my Black and white friends are like, "Oh, who cares?" And I was like, "This is important. And of course, then it became part of Black consciousness in 2000.
Right.
And then I kept, the Talagita experiments, all these things, bombing Black Panthers, Operation Chaos, which was trying to destroy, the Black Breakfast in Oakland. And I was like,
right.
There are evil demonic factions trying to make sure that Black magic and intellect does not get out because it's freedom. It is freedom.
Right.
And I think you're right. It's like, I'm like, you need to tell people, we either, as Benjamin Franklin said, we either stand together or we hang apart.
Right. That is so true. It is so true. And, we talk, since the book has come out, I've talked to a lot of people, men and women, African-American men and African-American women, and they all say the same thing. They feel this sense of love and this sense of urgency to try and pull it back in. You know what I'm saying? And so I appreciate that. I appreciate that from them because that was my goal as well. Being a woman, I can speak from a woman's perspective, but I do not alienate anybody. I want them to understand that, the love, the nurturing, because we always associate that with women. If we can nurture ourselves and stop and being so hard edged about it, then we can open it up for our community, and for African American women, we understand that that's where it has to start. A lot of our nurturing has to come from us, right? And I think, enslavement took a lot from us, and a lot of that stigma is still DNA related. I believe that. And so, when you're separated from your family, you're doing all these things are happening to you, then, it's easy when these killings started again, right? To have people, that residual energy to come up and you start to get back into the angry mode. Well, you really, what you're saying is you did not rescue me when I was enslaved and you can't rescue me now. So I'm what am I going to do? And so I think we have to sort of, self-soothe, and then we can soothe each other, but we have to really, bring it back in. And that's what I hope that the book would do for people.
Yeah. I think it does a good job. And you're right. I mean, my wife has to correct me and she tells me, ancestral trauma does not heal by itself. Doesn't matter if it's 50 years, 100, 1,000 years, our ancestors are still in pain or they're still talking to us. So I'm sure you would agree. Do you have a way or do you work with people to maybe heal some of those ancestral wounds?
Yeah, I do. I do a lot of past life reading. And what I always tell people is that, there are, because, people, when you say past life, a lot of people want to know everything. Was I Cleopatra? Things like that. Yeah, right. Right. Or Napoleon, right? And so, I always tell them, there's a lot of things that come up, but what usually sticks is what you need to work on in this life, right? It's the most residual energy that is, detrimental to your success right now. And so we usually go from that point, and then they're all for the Cleopatra or Napoleon thing, and then they really hone in and they understand. Okay, so I have some work to do, and so that I think that makes it easier for them to receive. And so that's what we usually do. We do that, and I do the reading, and then I send them the information, and I tell them all the time. I say, look, sit with this for about 3 days, right? I want you to read it. Sit with, go to work or whatever you have to do. You have that 3-day period, and then if we can talk about it. Sometimes some people are like, it's heavy. Can we talk? A month from now, and that's okay. And so we usually come back together and talk about it, and then they'll say, well, yeah, this is, it's off of what I was in the past life, and more on, I see these things playing out. I see this, I understand this. And so we will talk about works that they need to do. It might be a work that falls more in line with a Yoruba path, or it might be more Hoodoo, things like that they would have to do. And so that helps them. And so I usually follow them for about the next, 4 to 5 months, see how they're doing. We keep in touch, we talk about it, how they're progressing. And then I tell them, okay, for the next, whatever it is, I divine on it. I want you to, live in your truth and see what happens, see what comes up for you. And so that's the way I usually do it. And it's not, for me, it has to be a connection So it's not like I'll do the reading and here you go ahead and have a nice day, you know. So it's more, you know, let's see, you know, how you can walk from this, because you know, a lot of times it's wobbly leg stuff, you know. They feel like you know, I wasn't ready for that, because everybody wants to hear the great things, you know, but you know, the work healing, you know, for yourself, because I always tell them you can work on it now or you can, you know, live it again, you know. So yeah.
Definitely makes sense. And Vince, what do you think, or do you have a question for Mawiyah?
Oh yeah, I'm interested in the religion, philosophy, and so forth, and practices. Basic question: is there a difference between hoodoo and voodoo, and if so, what is it?
Yeah, yeah, it's a good one. Yeah, well, voodoo for one is a spirit, it's a religion, it's practice in that way. And so hoodoo is not. Anybody, you can have people of any faith or belief system, and they could be a conjurer or a hoodoo practitioner. And that's the biggest difference. People usually, you know, they'll bundle them together. That hoodoo voodoo thing, and but there's totally different, because voodoo is its own religious practice, and there initiations that go with that, right? And then hoodoo is not, no, not at all. You know, you could use the Bible. Some people use the Bible just for their spell work when they work with hoodoo. Some people don't use the Bible at all. They will just talk to their roots or whatever they're using. So it's a very relaxed, much more relaxed system. You know, it's a spiritual practice that can fit up under any type of, if you want to call your religion, it can fit neatly in there, packaged in there with it. Whereas voodoo is its own entity. Yeah.
I see. So are there, as far as the spirit world, is hoodoo, it must be more open in that regard too? I mean, that people use either saints or ancestors, or maybe are there monotheistic hoodoo practitioners, or how does that work?
Yeah, so some people do work with the saints, and just the saints, right? Our traditional saints, you know, we think of. And some people work with their ancestors, or they work with, I like to call heroes of you know, of their culture, right? Somebody they looked up to, Marcus Garvey, you know, it could be whoever, and they would deify that individual, put them on their altar, and work with that individual as well for certain aspects of the life that they live, that they feel like they need to pull into their own lives. So yeah, it's very open about that. And I think that's another reason too why, you know, you have a lot of women really, really gravitating towards it, because it allows them the freedom to use people like Zora Neale Hurston, Audre Lorde, people that they look up to and resonate with as their deities, and on their altar, and talk to them, and, you know, sort of motivate them to get them going. So yes, hoodoo is very open in that regard of using that. And voodoo uses a lot of the, you know, their lows, and then there's overlaps with some Yoruba, so they may use some of the same things there. But more hoodoo is much more where you can pull whatever you want, you know, however you want to put them there on the altar. If you want to use a loa, or you want to use someone from the Yoruba culture, Yoruba deity, you can do that as well in hoodoo. So it's much more open in that regard.
I see. Even Elvis, huh? Because you think people use Elvis?
Yes. Yes.
Interesting. And how about the hoodoo practitioners feel that these are real entities, or do they believe that it is more within their own minds, you know, as concepts, or how is that conceived, or does it differ from person to person?
It differs from person to person. I know for me, I think it is real energy. And one of Louisa Tish, who wrote Jambalaya, I remember years ago, she was on this lecture, and she was talking about how she put up a picture of a Sojourner Truth on her altar. And you know, she was afraid to do all of these speaking engagements, and she put her up there on the altar, and she said for like a year it would just flow out of her. And so one day she said that the picture frame just fell off, you know, it just fell off the altar. And she figured that at that point in time, it was time to let mama rest, you know, and just move on to a different, you know, saint or somebody that she would deify to use for energy, and you know, as she needed, you know, to do. So, you know, yeah, it just varies from person to person. using that energy, how they see that energy in their life. Even if I use Zora Neale Hurston a lot on my in my altar work, because she did a lot of the study of folklore especially for African Americans, and she went and she got initiated. She was initiated to the voodoo aspects of things. She actually got initiated. She was an actual practitioner in hoodoo ceremonies. She didn't just stand back with a tablet. She was full-fledged, all involved. And so I like to keep her up there as a reminder of, the work that I do. And as I wrote the book, I had her right there on the side of my computer. So yeah, I look at her as an actual energy, who is motivating and helping me to see these passions through and to hopefully reconnect a lot of those traumatized roots. Mm-hmm.
I see. So I imagine that it's mostly people that are no longer alive as physically on the earth that people use for this. Is that true?
Yes.
Yeah. You wouldn't want to use your next door neighbor, even if he was a great guy.
No.
Why do your boys relate to hoodoo? Are they want to be practitioners, or are they too modern, or what?
Yeah, all of the kids. I have 5. I have 2 boys and 3 girls. So all of them are initiated in the Yoruba system, and so for them, they do a lot of hoodoo work. They do a lot of root work. That's what they do a lot of. Just with the herbs and things like that, collecting the herbs. Bundling everything. And sitting with them in spirit mode, and whatever prayers or whatever needs to be offered, they do a lot of that. They like to do a lot of that the trappings of the nature things that we're going to be using. So yeah, it really does resonate with them. They were first initiated to Ifa in the Yoruba system, and so from that point on, they saw how that transformed their life. Because when you get initiated into the Yoruba system, one of the first things that they do is they talk to you about your path, where you're going, which are some things you need to do, and they give you a really extensive playbook, right? And so I think once they saw that, because girls, we love all things witchy, but the boys, I think once they saw, exactly what was before them, right, and they saw, a lot of the things that the Iya and the Baba, the lady and the man, were saying, they it really sparked some interest in them, because they understood that they knew a lot of things that happened to them before that nobody had said to them. And so at that point in time, they were really honed in on, how can I make my life better? As well as, they felt the freedom of not being forced to sit inside of a church, on Sunday. It's, they could go sit outside, go take a walk in nature and say, I'm, channeling Obatala. I'm sitting with Obatala today. I'm going to go out here and do this, and so that for them allowed them to feel like they have full autonomy over their own spiritual practice and their spiritual belief. So for the boys, they really gravitated toward that. I think the freedom of it all. I remember when I was growing up, my brother would always try to ride his bike so he could avoid going to church, and go back home and watch Batman. So yeah.
Are they voodoo or hoodoo or both?
My children?
Yeah.
Oh, Yoruba. They're initiated in the Yoruba system of Ifa, and the hoodoo. They practice hoodoo as well. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so they're both.
Yes.
Oh, interesting. How, and yourself as well, I take it?
Yes. I grew up, and when I grew up, my it's lots of hoodoo. My family on my mother's side, voodoo. And then on my father's side, Santeria. So I was initiated to that as well. So yeah, it's a blend of all of it.
My godmother was Brazilian, and it was it was a mixture of Catholicism and Santeria. And all that. Yeah, I had the best of both worlds when I was initiated. And and of course, you say in your book that you do use the Psalms, you use tarot, so it can be syncretic. You can kind of make it your own.
Yeah, I just believe, the more tools you have, right? The more in tune you can, you never have a chance to say, I can't do this right now, because you have it with you. You have all of it. So yeah, I just feel like, the more tools you have, the better equipped you are for any situation that comes. I blended together, and that's one of the beautiful things about hoodoo. You don't have to say, well, I can't do this because it doesn't go with this system. You can pull from all of it. You know what I'm saying, and get what you need. So yeah.
No, it makes sense. And how do you feel it's making inroads? I don't have any statistics, obviously. For men, Islam, Hoteps, other movements have made inroads with Black men. Do you see, but I'm assuming most Black women are still Christian, or do you see the old ways making inroads?
I see the old ways making inroads. I see a lot of younger, African American women and men, wanting that freedom of study of hoodoo. A lot of African American men, when they step away from Christianity, they do, and Islam, they do want to know about, the Ifa aspect, the Yoruba aspect in terms of, Shango and Ogun, they resonate with definitely the male deities, right? And so once they get involved in that, then they also find themselves wanting more, right? And so they'll study hoodoo or Palo Mayombe, they'll go into other avenues of study where they feel that the more energy, the better for them, right? And more masculine. It makes them feel more, more like a man, So and with women, I'm finding that they're just feeling like a lot of women have come to me, they feel like their needs are not being met within the church. Like it's a lot of making preachers' pockets fat, and not enough answering their problems. It's like these old dead ways that are not servicing, what's going on today. And Ifa, some diviners will say, I'm just going to divine for you, and I'm just going to say what is written in Yoruba. I'm just going to talk to you. And so they'll send people their copies of they will say, you want a copy of it, they'll email you a copy of the divination, and all of it is in Yoruba. And then sometimes they may translate some things and tell you what it says or whatever. But some people walk away and they go, okay, that's fine, but I don't know how that applies to my life now in this world, in this place, at this time. And then you have other diviners who say, okay, screw that. I'm going to talk to you in this language, right? So you can really understand what's going on. And so I just find that for women, a lot of times when I work with them, that's the first thing they say. I understand this. Now, I understand this divination. I can take this when we get off this phone, or when I leave this internet, I can print it out, take this with me, and I can understand what's going on. And that's what a lot of women find that they're not getting in traditional, Western religion. It's a lot of, just pray for it. It'll be okay. Go read this, and not how can I work with it, So yeah.
Right. Yeah, for sure. Yeah. And I'm sure like why people are attracted to Gnostic Christianity is because women have a divine feminine in Sophia, Mary Magdalene, which you don't have in Protestant Christianity or Catholicism. Mm-hmm. I'm sure women are like, I want something, a goddess or an archetype.
Right.
The feminine energies that are out there in the cosmos. So I'm sure that helps. And interesting too, as you were saying, you do talk about some celebrities, and God, I had forgotten, or I don't, shame on me, but I'd forgotten how big Sade was. I mean,
yeah,
late 80s and early 90s. I mean,
right.
I was music every other day. She was it. And then, of course, she just kind of disappears.
Right.
Know.
Yeah. I just love that about her. I love that about her. I think that's so magical to do it and then just leave, not even wanting to do interviews, like she does. Yeah.
It's so rare. What religion is she? I mean, Nigerian. Is she Anglican, Muslim, or?
I don't know. I know that at one time, I think I had read that her grandmother was an Oya priestess, and so she did some work with her grandmother, but I don't know, how committed to that she, what I'm saying? I don't know, how much of that she, utilizes, but I know she, at one point in time, I thought I read that he said that she worked with her, and that helped to kind of center her, Yeah.
Well, that makes
but yeah,
sense.
I thought that, incorporating the music and incorporating individuals and, the playlist and all that, I felt like, especially for African American people, a lot of times with our spirituality, the music helps to keep us grounded, right? And it also helps us to call spirit. And so when we're talking about a system that I wanted people to be able to access, and I wanted them to be able to do it wherever they were, if they were getting ready to go to work, or if they were in the car and they felt like they wanted to, chant and sing this song in the middle of everything. I wanted it to be some things that they felt like they could resonate with. And so, the use of the music itself, when I talked to clients, they were like, yeah, okay, yeah, I could I could do that. And I could see myself, and I'm using this and I'm doing that. And so I thought that would be helpful for a lot of people, not to have, feel like you just have to have, a chant, just this mystical chant that you're just playing and all your friends or all your colleagues are around, it's something, it could just be this song by Whitney Houston and nobody has to know what you're doing, that you're doing magic, nobody has to know what's going on in your head. And so I thought that would be a powerful means of having them take their magic with them, and not feel that they're boxed in.
Oh, yeah, for sure. I mean, Whitney Houston, what I say is whenever you have a singer that is connected to Black gospel, which usually means Pentecostalism, which usually means there's some sort of African animus hidden somewhere, whether it's Whitney Houston, Nina Simone, Ella Fitzgerald, you are getting close to the source. They're tapping into this source, no doubt.
And that's so very much hoodoo, right? It is, you're taking the magic of right now, right? And you're using it in that way that services right now, but it's still very liberating. It's still very healing. So, yeah.
Have you ever heard of, speaking of Elvis' sister, Loretta Tharpe?
I have heard of Loretta Tharpe, yeah, but not much.
She needs to be brought to the forefront. She was, in fact, she is really Elvis's first main inspiration because she was in the 30s. She came from a very impoverished cotton picking farm in Arkansas. Started with the gospel, and suddenly she became an international star, wealthy. But she did it her way. She evolved gospel. She would walk onto stage with her guitar and shake it. She wore wigs. She turned gospel into very feminine, sexual, and very powerful. And she became, again, international star. Elvis, as a kid, used to leave school early to get home, to listen to the radio, to listen to her radio show, which was huge. In fact, some music critics put her as one of the great guitar players because when it comes to guitar distortion, she invented it. So she was she's really a pioneer that unfortunately has been forgotten. There's good evidence she was a lesbian, and again, she thrived. She still could get the men excited out there on stage. So she was somebody that I hope we bring to the forefront. And for your book, what just the title, Calabash, maybe tell the audience about that. What does that mean? Why is it important?
There are many stories about the calabash, but one of the ones that resonate with me from growing up from both grandfathers is just this whole energy. The bottom part of this calabash, it's like a shikare. This you play it as a musical instrument. It resonates with this fat, this wide hipped, I always say bottom. There's this woman, and the elongated part of it is the masculine energy. And this whole energy, the two coming together, with this understanding that in order to survive, we both, right, have to make a pact with each other that we're going to support each other, right? It's not a calabash. You chop the top off and just have the bottom, It's so totally something else. And so the understanding that for a culture to survive, we have to come together. We have to make that pact of understanding that, what is born between us, we have to nurture together to its fullest so that we can enjoy the results of the fruit of those labors.
No, it makes perfect sense. And of course, I was, of course, attracted to the god Isu, the guardian of the crossroads, because again, I love the trickster, and of course Elvis when he was kind of at the crossroads, and Robert Johnson was at the cross. And I know people like to say, "Well, that's the devil." It's like, no, you're looking at a different character. He's not the devil. He's more it's Loki. He gives you gifts, but he also will turn your life upside down and wreck your ego and show you a new way to see the world. Right.
Right.
But yeah, you got to be careful. You got to be careful. And as we get to the end, maybe share some of the rituals that people can leverage or tap into that are in your book.
Well, I think I always like to give people some things that I would assume, I would think that a lot of people have access to. So one of the main things that I would offer to people is if you do not have a lot of those herbs and things on hand, just using your water, taking your water, taking a glass of water and speaking over that water, whatever it is you want for that day, whatever energy you would like to invoke for your life, even if you're getting ready to take a bath, a shower, same thing over that. And then, allow that to wash over your body. Same thing if you're going to make a cup of coffee, those kind of things in the morning, or tea, or whatever you're drinking, whatever it is, whispering over those things. And bay leaves, if you have bay leaves, those are wonderful, quick, easy tools to use, right? I like to write on my bay leaf what I want for that day, protection or whatever, and I put it in my shoe, things like that. Somebody's bothering you. This is another one of my favorites. Their name on a paper bag, the really paper one, not plastic, and write their name on that. I write their name on there 9 times, any kind of way, just mess it up. And put it at the bottom of my shoe, tape it to the bottom of my shoe, and I'm walking on them.
I love it.
Yeah. So, yeah.
Yeah, for the audience, there's a lot of very cool rituals and spells in the book. You will find something that will work for you. But as we get to the advance, any last questions or comments you might have for Mawiyah?
Yeah, Mawiyah. What's the most amazing thing that you have had happen in your career in Hoodoo? Some sort of effect that would be really impressive.
Well, there's been a lot. Let me think of one. Well,
you won the lottery.
No, I would hate to end on this one, but it's okay, but I can do this one. Well, I work at a school, and for the past 14 years, I've been the only African American person there, a teacher. And so when I first got there, it was really, really difficult. Because we moved northern part of Louisiana. I'm originally from New Orleans, but after Hurricane Katrina, we had to get the kids in school and everything. The oldest was in 4th grade at that time. And so we moved to the northern part of Louisiana because we teach and we wanted to stay where our certificates would be, still work, right? And so like I say, the only African American there, and it was torture. There'd be feces in my garbage can the next day. They'd write all kind of mean things on the board, and so I was at a point where I was like, okay, do I resort to Hoodoo? Do I do that? What do I do? Do I do the human resources? That what is it? And I was sitting in the room, and my grandfather came. He had passed many years before. And he came into the room, and then a lady came into the room, and she said that she was the spirit of this area. And so she was really crass, She was like, well, what the fuck are you gonna do? Are you gonna sit there and fucking cry? And spirit is beating on me. My grandfather, he just stood there. He's like, look, you have to make a decision. You can run from this, or you can stand and fight. And so that's all I'm saying. And then he left, and she was just there. She was just going on and on. And so before she left, she gave me a hug, right? A hug, and I could really feel her energy. And so she told me that her name was Bad Grad. And so she left. And after that, I just got all these ideas of things that I were going to do. And I started working with my Adinkra symbols. In New Orleans, there are a lot of Adinkra symbols in the ironwork, because the Senegambia region of Africans, when they came to the city, they were told to do all of this work. And so within that work, they put all of these messages. And so these Adinkra symbols, I always tell people, kind of like sigils, they spoke to other people, other Africans, the language, and you still see it in the ironwork there if you go there, right? And so I'd use these symbols in my room, and I just would put them in, picture frames and put them here and everywhere. And, within a period of time, some of those people, they got a job, they were removed from the job, other people came in, and it just started to get much better, much better, much better. And
that's good.
She would come, she would still come, and she wasn't current, she wasn't doing all the cursing anymore. She would just sit and smile, And so I think for me, I could have ran from that. I could have gotten out of that. I could have done a lot of different things. But I think that fight helped prepare me to write this book. So yeah.
Fantastic. Thank you.
Yeah, great to hear.
You're welcome.
All right. Great. We are at the end of the interview. Where do you want people to find out more about you? I'll have it on the show notes, but where should they look for your book or anything?
Definitely. The Barnes & Nobles, go anywhere, Amazon, Llewellyn for the book. But if they want to know, things that I'm doing, go to my website. It's my name, Mawiyah Kai EL-Jamah Bomani.com. And then there they can link up to all my other sites from there. So that would be the best place for them to go.
Awesome. Yeah, we'll check it out. And I'll have it on the show notes when the interview is out as you're listening to this, so you can just click it. But Mawiyah, thank you very much for coming on.
Thank you guys for having me. I'm sorry about all my technical difficulties.
It happens. It happens. The spirits are playful.
Yeah, it's that Ogun energy, right? He's like, no.
Well, thank you very much, and good luck with everything.
Thank you.
And there you have it, you modern-day Tom Sawyers. Your mind not for rent to any god or government. Mawiyah sharing some powerful gnosis. Now let us to our chat with David Lee on an arc of chaos magic and other cool mysticism. This is the Aeon Byte interview, and with us we have the pleasure of being joined by David Lee to discuss his new book, Primordial Chaos, Writings and Rituals Then and Now. David, how are you? And thank you very much for coming on the show.
I'm very well, thanks, Miguel, and it's a pleasure. It's a pleasure to be on your show.
Pleasure is all mine. So, I guess why don't we tell the audience, or why don't you give a brief summary of who you are and how you came to write Primordial Chaos?
Well, I mean, it's very much, as the title suggests, it's a lot of it is about stuff that happened way back in the day, and I was a founder member of the first chaos magic IoT chaos magic group in Britain, in West Yorkshire in 1980. I was one of the people that was in that first group, and so I've been around. I'm still in the IoT. I'm still active in it. I serve as what's called an elder now, kind of like not having to do a great deal, but still helping out sometimes. So I've been around on the chaos magic scene for over 40 years, basically. I haven't written as many books as some people who've been around like that. I wrote a few books. I wrote a book about making incense. I wrote another book about magic and its interface with mysticism. That's Chaotopia. I wrote a book about the northern magic, which is another of my interests, the runes and so forth. And more recently, about 6 years ago, I wrote a book about breathwork and energy work and its connection with magic. So this is kind of looking back over my magical life. It's not actually a memoir in itself, but it contains memoir elements. So it's like it's like some chaos magic writings that were in the zines of the time, like Chaos International. Then some writings in the Northern Magic, and writings about psychedelics and body alchemy. And finally, the final section has got a whole chunk of stuff on public rituals I've done, stuff that I've worked up either on my own or with other people collectively, worked up rituals for a bunch of people to do.
Fascinating. Yes, your book has it all, including, you have designs, images, rituals, the whole 9 yards. So there's something there for everyone. So I guess the question would be, what has changed in the last 30 or 40 years? I mean, obviously society has greatly changed. I was just thinking, God, the 90s. I kind of miss going to the video store or putting a CD in my thing, or a more simple life. What has changed in your estimation?
Oh my God, that's a big and challenging question. Yes, sure, there's all the obvious stuff. I mean, there's, the internet and social media, the awareness of the climate crisis. These are two of the things that have changed things the most in the last 15, 20 years. Before that, it seemed just, a sort of a staircase of technology that was getting more sophisticated all the time. And all of a sudden, there's another side to it. So I think one of the upsides, I guess, is just, this is a purely consumer thing in a way, is that you can find anything. Well, not anything, but you can find a lot of things that used to be very difficult to find. You can find books that may or may not be out of print. You can find old videos and so forth. There's a lot of stuff you can find. There's some really good features to the internet. And as it was first designed and conceptualized, it was a liberating force. But then, of course, big business got in there and messed it up like they always do. The human capacity to screw things up finally manifested on a grand scale. And so we've now got the so-called post-truth era, where people think that if something makes them feel good emotionally, that it's true. And so there's been upsides and downsides. I don't know whether want to get any more. I don't have any inspiring kind of specific things to add to that at the moment, but maybe we'll come back to that.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, do you feel, for the magic community, do you feel positive? Do you have a good sense in your gut, or maybe disillusioned? How do you feel today about where we're going?
I'm old enough to have seen a few cycles come and go of magical interest. I'm actually quite enjoying there's a massive magical revival on at the moment. I mean, since, I don't know, certainly the last 10 years. It's been particularly intense in the last few. And I think that, of course, has its plus side and its minus side as well. But I'm very optimistic about that. A friend of mine runs a shop which has got one section of it is a bookshop cafe meeting place. It's where we'll be holding my book launch on Saturday, Airy Fairy in Sheffield. And we were chatting during the lockdowns, and she said that in the first year, when there was, in the first year that coincided with the lockdowns, she'd had to order about twice as many magic books as on the previous year. There was a massive surge of interest in magic. And this is at the same time I was writing a piece about the craziness of so-called conspiracy theory. I use scare quotes with conspiracy theory because, of course, there are real conspiracies, except that they're played out in full view. There isn't a great deal of secrecy there. So I thought, wow, yeah, this is what's happening, isn't it? People are getting into magical thinking, and this is great. But of course, a lot of people that get into magical thinking completely abandon their critical faculty. So they end up believing in garbage like Pizzagate and things, rather than actually stepping out into constructing a magical reality of which the critical faculty is a part. So I'm actually pretty, although there are some horrendous beliefs going around out there at the moment, I'm fairly confident that the magical scene has had a real growth spurt recently, and I've met some terrific people who've come into the magical world in recent years.
Well, that's certainly good news to see more choices. The hold of the Abrahamic religions is not as strong as it used to be. Technology allows us to find what works for us, for our own spiritual world, inner world, and all that. So that is certainly good news. Yeah, and as far as conspiracy theories, I don't know if you agree, but whenever somebody is attracted to conspiracy theories, I don't say what is the conspiracy, but why is it conspiracy?
Oh, yes.
Why were you attracted to Pizzagate or UFOs or John F. Kennedy? And usually we'll find there's something inside of us that needs to be addressed, some trauma, some journey. People will be arguing 20 years from now about JFK and the lone gunman. But what's inside of you, what attracted you, is probably more important, don't you think?
Well, I think in an era where so much of what's going on is visible. Obviously, there are still secrets, but so much of what happens in the world is visible. But it's terrifying, really. I mean, because news by its nature is negative. Bad news travels fast. What was it? I think, who was it? I can't remember who said it. It might have been Mark Twain, that a lie can get round the world before the truth has even got its shoes on. And, so that was in whatever, it's just over a century ago. Even more true now. So I think we've got, but people can find communities amongst all of this, and they can find you can find the others of your particular persuasion, which is one of the positive sides of internet culture.
Yeah, that is true. We're all looking for communities and a connection. And at the same time, your book does talk about one of the negative forces today, and that is scientism. As you write, David, science is a tremendously useful mythology that applies logic to physical phenomena and enables new technologies. Its approach to truth is, at its best, open-ended and non-dogmatic. Yes. Scientism, on the other hand, is a religion. Adherents declare that science is the only way of approaching truth, and that any experiences that cannot be explained or explained away by scientific truth as it stands today must be invalid, or even delusions or hallucinations. So basically, there's that double-edged sword where these communities are gaslighting us and telling us, well, you're crazy because you're not following what we believe, which is the materialist, reductionist attitude.
Oh, God, absolutely. I mean, the magical thinking is actually right there in the Bible of psychiatry, the DSM, as a symptom of being crazy. So if you start to think that there is a mysterious connection between your will and what's going on around you, you're technically crazy. But I think Scientism is as crappy as every other religion. I don't like religions, and Scientism is just another religion. It's a bargain basement religion. It doesn't even provide satisfaction. It's just like some sort of ontological police force at the edge of reality, beating you over the head with slogans.
Yeah, I would certainly agree. And I mean, there is something that humanity has forgotten. That quoting one of my Lord and Saviors, Doctor Who, he once said, souls are not made of atoms, they're made of stories. And of course, Joseph Campbell said, people don't understand facts, they understand stories. And even neuroscience has stated that our minds are still what they were 100,000 years, where we saw images and symbols and narrations. Linear thinking is still kind of alien to humans, right? And it seems magic is that language, you might say, to get us to unlock the secrets of who we are.
Yeah, it's a challenge. I think we need to assimilate scientific thinking. We need to abandon scientism completely, but we need to assimilate scientific thinking. It's something it's only really been a dominant aspect of culture for a few centuries, and it's tremendously useful. And it's also very much, it's an aspect of rational inquiry, is an aspect of human consciousness. It's not something to be ashamed of and to be put down in the corner. But scientism, the idea that that's the only way to approach reality, is absolutely dismal. It's a prison planet mentality. Yeah.
And you yourself in your book say that you started practicing magic in October 1978. How has that changed your life for the better, or what experiences have really shaped you?
Well, there's been a number of experiences that have shaped me, that I've had magically, but how it's changed my life, that is a really big one. I think that it's a case of finding what really matters to you. I guess you'll be familiar with that idea. I mean, just at a certain point, you just need to find the view of life that really matters to you, and go along that. It's your own path, and go along that path and find out where it takes you. And if magic, when I was about 18 or 17 or something like that, I wanted to do things that have never been done before. It was all like, wow, doing things that haven't got a name yet, in the words of the song. But and that became magic for me. So magic became my life in a certain sense. I have gained things from magic, but I think really it's the satisfaction of, or no, satisfaction is perhaps, even that is perhaps a rather inaccurate word, but it's some degree of fulfillment of moving along a road which is to do with one's own truth at the deepest level you can, the deepest. Oh God, that sounds so pretentious, doesn't it? Finding one's own truth, really. Magic for me, it's been very much a case of that. That's the name I put on it, magic. It's been a case of living as vividly as possible. That's really what it's about, living with as much richness as possible. And this comes about by being able to change the way you view the world. So that is where magic comes in. Magic enables you to shift out of the black iron prison of scientism and move into a way of looking at the world that's to do with synchronicity and a causal connection. It's to do with the linkedness of things and the way that that features of the mind or the will are connected, definitely connected with stuff that's going on around you. So that's the reward, really, to find how to live like that.
Yeah, bringing back Joseph Campbell, he did say it's not about the meaning of life, it's the experience of life. And thanks for the Philip K. Dick term, black iron prison, taking us to the Gnostics. And that's always going to be the balance, right, David? We want that world, again, of images and experiences and magic, but on the other side, we want to stay grounded in logic, reason, and facts. And that's a hard dance, don't you think? Sometimes, we all want to be Plato's hermaphrodite or the Adam Cadman, where Jung, everything's united, but it's not easy.
No, people burn out. People get exhausted and burn out and grasp for some degree of certainty. It was only this afternoon I was thinking about 3 people I've known over the last few years who've had kind of magical. Well, it wouldn't be fair to say that one of them has had a magical burnout. Nobody really knows what happened to him, but he sort of like went into, from being very active in magic, went into religion, conventional religion. Somebody else I know who was very active in magic, who did have all the signs of a burnout in his communications with people, went into a conventional religious stance. And the other person who had a spectacular kind of public burnout, a blogger, I don't want to give his name, hopefully he's doing better now. He became an absolute scientism tub thumper. Nothing is mystery, nothing is real except scientific facts, that kind of thing. So people do occasionally burn out and sort of head for the cotton wool reality of some religion or other. It is a difficult line to walk.
And how would you describe magic, David? I mean, after all, like I often tell people, one of the most mystical, alchemical, magical rituals of all is the Catholic Mass. They got it right. It is completely alchemical. It is about, dying and rising with the God-man, unifying with his body, and the bread into flesh, and wine into blood, and done right with the incense and the choir, all that. It's very magical. But when people ask you what is magic, what do you usually say?
That's a good one. I would say that it's a way of living one's life to the absolute full. And that's a pretty, all definitions of magic, if they're broad enough, are a bit vague, and that's certainly a vague one. But yeah.
No, that makes sense. That certainly makes sense. And how would you describe or tell people about what is chaos magic when they ask you or they're curious?
Okay, well, to me, chaos magic is, its core idea is the power of belief to influence and to some extent construct your reality. So that when you, the first thing you do when you go into your magical working or you go into your magical temple is that you have to shift into being a magician. That's the first layer of belief. Instead of being, I am an accountant, I am a bartender, or I'm a physicist or whatever. It's I'm a magician now. That's the first thing you have to do. You have to shift into that. That, of course, is because of because of the dominant reality in this age is the is scientism. So you have to do that for a start. But even then, what you have to find a way to kind of convince yourself that a different reality is happening, so that when you draw your sigil, you're telling yourself something, and then you're kind of forgetting about the conscious part of that, letting it sink into your mind. So again, you're using belief in a certain sense. It's some people would argue you're not. I think you are, really. I think you're still using belief there. The idea of deciding something is true, and it is central. The other thing about chaos magic is that there's a very pragmatic side to it. If it works, use it. So if you can use stuff from psychology, you can use stuff from mysticism, you can use stuff from ceremonial magic, so on and so forth. If it works, use it. So it's very pragmatic, and it's very much based on the idea of the centrality of belief, and symbol systems that have accrued around magic, such as the runes, such as Kabbalah, such as tantric symbolism, and all of that. They are just specific examples of belief systems, and you can go to the core of that, learn what it's really about, and work that stuff for yourself.
No, well said indeed. And wasn't chaos magic a reaction or a heresy? Like, well, all religions or movements are either a reaction or a heresy, but it was a reaction against what the tight and terse ceremonial magic that was dominating. It was giving people more breathing room. Or what do you think, David? Why did chaos magic appear, besides fighting scientism years later?
Yeah, I think what you've just said is true. It was also a reaction against the scientism influence, psychologization of magic. Maybe, some people were, kind of magic kind of does work, but it's all to do with, it's all your mind. Your mind's bigger than you think, but it's all your mind. And so getting beyond that, and it was also, it was a reaction to the assumption that you had to start off believing. It's a reaction to the idea that you had to start off assuming that gods and spirits were real. I mean, Aleister Crowley was, he was a very advanced magician for his time, and he still stands like a colossus right across Western magic. He's there. You can't go anywhere without seeing Crowley.
Right.
His stuff, basically, there is, even though it's supposed to be experimental and quite scientific, and the method of science, the aim of religion and all that, it's actually, there are some assumptions in there, and it's very difficult to use Crowley's conceptions of Kabbalah without sort of believing in some cosmic reality to start with. They're in Kether or in the beyond, in the veils, and then all this kind of crystallizes down until you get to Malkuth. So you still had to start off with a certain amount of metaphysical assumptions. I think that's what it amounts to. You had to start off with quite a bag full of metaphysical assumptions to work Crowley's magic, whereas with chaos magic, you didn't. You can start, that's why it appealed to me when I was in my mid-20s and doing post-grad research in science. And but I was really interested in magic, but I kept being put off by currents of magic that appeared to be trying to forget that science ever happened. Whereas when chaos magic came along, I was thinking, this is me. This is what, this is magic for skeptics. This is magic for people who, some basic techniques. You take up the techniques, you decide to do something. Weird stuff happens. Wow, that sigil works. That actually works. And that flips over your idea of what reality is. Yeah, rather than the sigil's probably what it's for is almost unimportant, almost completely unimportant. What is important is that it shifts your metaphysics, it shifts your cosmology. It enables you to acknowledge that you're living in a world where weird things are possible. And that's what appealed to me about chaos magic.
No, that makes perfect sense. And you yourself have done a lot of study and insight. So maybe you want to share with the audience from your book. For example, you talk about you found a new approach to Crowley's liberate, and other things maybe you want to share with the audience, or how your exploration of the concept of aeons in magic, inspired by Crowley's 3 aeons and Pete Carroll's 5 aeon model?
The aeon stuff is, it's very interesting. I find it very, it was very powerful for me. It was a real draw, the aeon stuff. Crowley's idea that you've got the aeons of Isis, going back to the pagan era, other, people close to nature. Then you've got the rise of the monotheisms, especially of the dying god. So there's only one god, and he's like Jesus type god. And then, in the third aeon, it's like we had the mother, the father, and then we get the child, the crowned and conquering child, Horus. And I can see a certain amount of validity in that model. A certain amount of mileage you can get out of that. I mean, if you only look at public media today, it's incredibly infantile. I mean, that's really the sort of low side, the dark side of the Aeon of Horus. People are resorting to baby talk again. I noticed this fashion for baby talk over the last 10, 15 years. People saying words like poo and tummy, which nobody over the age of 8 used to say. This is infantilization, which, of course, is lovely for late-stage capitalism.
Right.
And I think that is the dark side of the Aeon of Horus. But the other side of it, that it's not to do with authority. You cannot find authority, you cannot find effective authority handed down metaphysically from above. The old Aeon of Osiris stuff. So we're out of that now. We've got to find inner truth, and we've got to follow that. And that this is the voice in the silence, Huapar Krat, your holy guardian angel, your higher self, what you want to call it. Your contact with that emerges from your magical practice. And so I get that. Yeah, Aeon of Horus certainly worked. But I liked then what Pete Carroll did. He came along and split things up a bit more. So the Aeon of Isis gets spread out, it gets taken into shamanism, followed by paganism. So shamanism is hunter-gatherer spirituality. Paganism is early city-states, pre-industrial city-states. Then you get imperial type spirituality, which is, monotheism. It's like the spirituality of conquest and getting everybody else under your flag so you can force them all to believe in the same thing. And then after that, you get atheism, which is kind of like a little bit like the Aeon of Horus, but I think it's more precise in a way what it says about culture. Scientism, if you like, I would call that scientism, that fourth aeon. And then, of course, in Pete Carroll's model, the fifth aeon is the pandemonium, where we'll go kind of beyond atheism into an awareness of, let's say, Baphomet, the living spirit of the entire planet, all the life forms on this planet. And we won't worship it, but that will be, in a way, the equivalent of our God. So we've gone beyond atheism. And I thought, well, okay, I rather like that model. That worked for me for a while. Back in 1992, I did a recorded pathworking with music called The Gallifron Rite, which is still available from one of the Falcon companies, one of the new Falcon companies, as a disc. That was a case of it's a pathworking that started off from, it exactly followed Pete Carroll's model. It starts off from shamanism and ends up in the pandemonium. But then years later, I started to question all this. But actually the bit that comes in then is that people who aren't even into magic are thinking like this. You probably come across a mystical philosopher called Ken Wilber.
Oh, yeah, of course.
Yeah. I mean, he's someone who I got quite interested in his writings about 20 odd years ago, and I started reading a few of his. And I sort of went off his stuff after a while because, for a start, he doesn't get magic. He doesn't get what magic's about. Magic for him is just primitive superstition. Unless, of course, it's done by people who are completely enlightened, and then it gets a bit fuzzy at the other end. But anyway, he rejigged something called spiral dynamics, which in turn was a bit of a sort of like model for analysing businesses and things, but it came from a sociological study done by somebody called Claire Graves way back in the day. And spiral dynamics is aeonics by another name, so that I think their first aeon is nonsense. The first, they call them memes rather than aeons. The first meme is nonsense. The second meme is purple, and that's essentially shamanism. The third meme is like red, which is essentially paganism, etc., etc. By the time you get to fifth aeon, you've got something called yellow, which is supposed to be a conspectus of everything. So that you've got, you're looking back, you can utilize all of the aeons. And I think that's very much like chaos magic. So that's a yellow meme. And I thought, this stuff's got some mileage. So I start looking at the predictions of the later memes. What are they supposed to do? And the whole thing gets a little bit incoherent. And then I went really off it because I started to think about, well, all of this stuff is very Euro, or it's very sort of West Civ centric, I don't say Euro centric, but Euro stroke American centric. It's very much Western civilization centered. And ultimately it's based on an idea of progress, because what Wilbur was trying to do was trying to say, look, I know things look shit at the moment, but spirituality is coming together with intellectual understanding of the world through science. It's coming together with psychology and psychotherapy. It's all going to become glorious and wonderful. And this is a progress vision. And I think we've all got great reasons to doubt the ideology of progress, certainly in the last few decades. Certain aspects of things do progress, certain aspects of technology do progress. As for human ability to utilize them positively, that doesn't seem to progress, or it certainly, doesn't seem to have got far enough. So I became, having become disenchanted with progress in general, that made me somewhat disenchanted with aeonics.
No, that makes sense and really well said. And speaking of progress and changing times, have you experienced any of the infamous cancel culture that goes today? For example, in this era, if you mention Aleister Crowley, Julius Evola, Kenneth Grant, or there's anybody who's not sinless, which doesn't exist, but you do get a big pushback, or even H.P. Lovecraft, God forbid. So have you had to navigate these hard waters?
Yeah, to some extent I have. I try and not get into public arguments with people, but sometimes it's unavoidable to stumble into some of that morass. I mean, a few years ago, I sent some course proposals to a course presenter in the UK, somebody who puts online courses on, and a few course proposals, and they saw one and said, "Oh wow, that Introduction to Rune Magic, yeah, we'd love that one. That's terrific." So I sent them, so it was all scheduled. They started selling tickets for my course, and so that the material would be on their servers, make it simpler for them, I sent them the videos and the PDF handouts for the course. And guess what? They read them, and because I'd mentioned the Rune Guild and Edred Thorson, they cancelled the course. And I got literally cancelled because I'd mentioned them in one of the handouts. It wasn't even like I was saying, really bigging them up. But, I'm a member of the Rune Guild. I don't have to agree with everything that everybody says within the Rune Guild. I've got my own runic path, but that's not what, that's to me what the guild's about. But any association with it is absolute anathema, you're all Nazis, kind of thing.
Really?
Yeah, it was absolutely bizarre. It took me 6 weeks of incredibly polite emailing to even find out what the rumors were that led to this. And, it's very bizarre. I think that this I know that cancel culture is sometimes used by far right people to sneer at anybody who sneer at anybody who's critical of the connections in someone's life, and I do get that, but there is certainly, a real thing happening there, and I think that it's very closely related to the idea of the artist and the art. Like, I came across somebody a couple of years ago saying, "Oh, I could never study the magic of Aleister Crowley because he was such a horrible person," and on certain levels, I can definitely get that. Like he was appalling to women, and he was appalling to some, to men as well. And, he was not a nice person, but it doesn't mean that his magic's invalid. Just as, for instance, a lot of people say Picasso was a pretty awful person. That doesn't mean that his art's rubbish. You may think his art's rubbish, and that's a separate question. That's completely separate. I think it's important very important to separate the artist out from the artwork, even if you keep in mind some of the artist's dodgier aspects, like Lovecraft's revolting racism. It's like, what's going on about? But his stories are, he was the first, in a way, one of the first people to really take the terror of a godless world and write about that terror instead of just about spooks and things like that. He deepened the idea of literary terror enormously. And of course, other people have taken up some of his ideas and even some of his stories and rewritten them, which is great. I love it when people do that. Sure. I read a novelette, a short novel by I can't remember the guy's name now. I've never heard of the writer before, but it was I bought it as an ebook, and it was a complete rewriting of the horror at Red Hook, I think is the name of the story. Yeah. It's one of his. It's a very, very good story, but it's horrendously racist. And this is told from the black person's perspective, and it's a really good novel. I strongly recommend it. Yeah, the horror at Red. It's called. Oh God, I'll have to find it out, and I'll tell you what. I'll find it out and stick it in the chat for you to append later, rather than slow things down now. So I think it's very important to distinguish the art from the artist.
Oh, I would agree 100%. I mean, most Thelemites that I talked to, they always said, yeah, I love the magic, but I would never hang out with Crowley. I would not go out for drinks with him. I'm the same way. It's like, I love Lovecraft, but I wouldn't want to sit for dinner with him. So
yeah.
So you can't, and it's interesting. And for the record, I mean, we talk about cancel culture. That was something that was started and weaponized by the Christian right. And now it's kind of gone to the left, although both sides still want to cancel Aleister Crowley, both the Christian right and the woke left. So it's kind of interesting. He's always going to be a target for people.
Oh, absolutely. There's some people who offend just about everybody. Yeah.
Yeah. He certainly did it. He was groundbreaker. And the other thing too, David, that you do talk about in your book in several chapters, and of course, this is an important topic, and it's can be as confusing as technology, is that of psychedelic practices and medicine. What is your take on how things have changed? Obviously, pharmaceutical companies have sort of they've kind of muddied the waters, but we do live in a society where now a lot of these entheogens are available. They're no longer illegal. They still can be abused like anything. But what is it? How has been your evolution with drugs?
Oh, sure. I mean, yeah, of course, entheogens can be abused, but I don't think any good has ever come out of the illegalization of drugs. I think it's an entirely negative thing. When I was in my teens, in the end of the 60s, beginning of the 70s, end of the 60s, when I was a teenager, and taking illegally produced LSD. And I mean, I was part of a little subculture that was, okay, we were actually a bit proud of ourselves, a bit sort of, we are the future kind of thing. But, that kind of, I'm sure you're aware of that kind of thing. But it was such an important set of experiences for me. I mean, that's what got me into magic, essentially, or rather back into magic, because later I realized that I'd been into magic until about the age of 3 or 4, when my dad told me it wasn't real, and I believed him. And so, of course, I started studying science, which was the next best thing for me. Yeah. I was in my late teens taking acid that I had actual magical experiences and started rethinking it, although it took me years to assimilate those experiences. So I went on and got a science degree in the meantime, and then realized that I still needed the magic. So psychedelics have been enormously influential and important and positive for me. I've also found them healing in many respects. So I understand the medicalization of psychedelics that's happening now. Of course, there's a couple of things about that. On the plus side, as a writer who, name again I can't remember, a paper I read sometime last year. There was a journal which still exists online. It's no longer a paper journal, Psychedelic Press Journal, strongly recommended. It was in there, and it was an article about the medicalization of psychedelics as being a Trojan horse for the whole of culture, so that the people are gaining a more positive idea rather than it just being crazy Manson hippies and everything. It's people are now gaining a positive idea of psychedelics, and this in turn might usher in a stage where they're used for things other than medicine. But on the other hand, you've got something happening where this medicalization I don't think is healthy culturally in some respects. I don't think it's culturally healthy to imagine that psychedelics only do healing. Sometimes you can take your mushrooms or whatever and lie down with your shades on and your carefully curated playlist and do the the mushroom healing thing, but that might work. It might work, or it might work, and you might get fantastic results. I know people who have. I've had fantastic results. But it's also possible that an hour into it, you start thinking, it's all done. The mushroom's fed up with this and wants me to do something else. So get up and make a cup of tea and think about what to do next, And it's, I think this is an inherent part. They are drugs of chaos. They really are. They're drugs that destabilize the top-down linkage systems in the brain and enable new kinds of linkages to form. And because they enhance neuroplasticity, they enable new neural connections to form. All of this can happen very fast in the course of just a few hours. So there's all sorts of potential usages for them, not just medicinal. Although like I say, I'm glad to see that people are getting healing from them in the mainstream.
Yeah, well, it's like anything, David. It's fire from the gods, whether it's magic, psychedelics, science. What did Jung say? Everything casts a shadow. Something's going to help you one day. It's going to destroy you the next day. So I would agree. I mean, my stance, and I tell people, do what you want. I don't think these drugs are helping society because I think as a culture, we're not ready for them. So I think cannabis and other things are doing more damage, especially when you combine it with the digital age. But as an anarchist, I think they should be legal. But I tell people it's like a mystery religion. If you're going to use entheogens, have a good hierophant, have a good teacher, have somebody that will guide you into the underworld.
I think I see where you're coming from here, Miguel. You're talking about one of the other main touted uses of psychedelics, which is as a sacrament. And I agree that is also a major and important use of them. But I don't think that's the only use of them. And have you ever come across a British scientist called David Nutt, Dr. Nutt, N-U-T-T?
No, I'm not familiar with
somebody who deals with all sorts of crazy stuff. He was commissioned by the government about 15 years ago or something to do a report on which drugs were the most harmful. An objective, scientifically done report. This is actually thousands of hours of work at hospital record, in hospital records and so forth, and talking to specialists to find out what people get admitted for, how much it damages them, how long the damage lasts. And he came up with he was commissioned to do this. He came up with a league table of the least dangerous down to the most dangerous drugs, and the government fired him.
What?
They said that it didn't send out the right message. In other words, the truth sent out the wrong message. And on Nutt's scale of actual provable harmfulness of drugs, psilocybin is the least harmful of all psychoactive drugs that are used. And the most harmful is the group around methamphetamine, crack cocaine, heroin. They're all, and alcohol is not far off of those. Alcohol is immensely harmful. Whereas there's a vast gulf between the harm done by alcohol and psilocybin and even LSD. So, and cannabis is almost completely harmless as well on that scale compared to just about everything else. So, have a look.
What was the government so offended about? Did they want mushrooms to be higher up, or what was their angle?
They have some stupid, dumbass prejudice against people getting high and want to enforce it.
Yeah. Only if they create it. only if they manage it and create their synthetic version. But yeah, God forbid it comes from the ground.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, I guess times are just as strange as they've always been. And also another thing that you explore too is in your book are ideas on hypnotism, self-hypnosis, the intersection with psychedelics, even talk about NLP. Could you share with the audience what your experiences are or how it can help your magical practices?
Oh, okay. I got interested in NLP, neuro-linguistic programming, in the mid-90s. A friend of mine got into it, got his practitioner certificate, and showed me a few things. And I used to go along because I got some lower back issues. I used to go on to this osteopath who also used to do that on me and help me through issues while he was crunching my back, which was nice. So I thought, oh, this is great. I need this stuff. So I went on a course over a year. Got my practitioner certificate, and I really enjoyed it. But later, I went off it a little bit. It was so over marketed, and everything that's over marketed promises more than it can possibly deliver. Even though there are some really good features to NLP, I think one of the key ideas in NLP that's really worth sticking with is modeling. The idea that if someone is excellent at something, then if you go along and not only watch them doing it and look at the algorithm, the instructions they're using to do it, but also question them about their attitudes, not only to the task they're doing, but to life in general and to other people's attitudes to what they're doing, the whole spectrum of it. And if you can model those closely enough, you can get miraculous levels of skill. One example of that was particularly good, that's obviously related to magic, was that there were some very interesting NLP modelers that worked with an Irish guy who was a seventh son and a hands-on healer. And he was like, he'd come from a traditional lineage and had that sort of belief system. And he did a load of healing on this group of people. I think they did it over a day or two, that weekend or something. Did a load of healing on various people, and the modelers were sitting around, taking notes. And I think it allowed them to film him and things like that. So they were to really break it down in detail, what this guy's actually doing, how he's breathing, how he's thinking, what he's visualizing, the way he's touching someone, etc. And something like, I think 2/3 of the participants miraculous healing after that weekend. So this is obviously a human faculty, like people. Healing magic is the easiest magic to do because bodies want to heal. So you're always working with the momentum of the universe when you do healing magic. But yeah, that's just one example of how NLP has really helped some people acquire magical skills. I wasn't there at that weekend, and I've never had any NLP experiences as fabulous and profound as that. But I think it's got some definite parallels with magic. I write about this a bit in the book about if you want to talk about making a servitor, for instance, in magic, in chaos magic, talk about making servitors. They're like a sort of little spirit that you've bolted together from ideas and elemental forces, or rather you bolted it together from instructions, and then you've put elemental force into it in the course of the ritual. So servitors are usually pretty simple things, but they're used multiple times. So the idea is you created something which will test a situation. If it needs to do anything, it will then do that thing, and then it will test again. And if that thing's been done, it will exit. Tote strategy: test, operate, test, exit. So they're really simple little helper spirits. If you think about what you're doing there, you're giving a set of instructions to something as to how to get somewhere. This is incredibly similar to strategies in NLP. If I go out to buy a pair of trousers, let's say, then I've got strategies about how to, some people will go to every shop in town, let's go, as well as on the internet. Other people will have a look on the internet, and then they'll go to a particular shop, or maybe they'll go to a market stall and they'll choose their trousers there. Or there'll be certain criteria that they're looking at as they're choosing them. And you'll be there's a strategy there. It will be think something, feel how that makes you feel, move on to the next thought, do something like go into town, go to a shop. How does that make you feel? And so on and so forth. So there's feeling and doing and thinking. dotting, like moving between those is what's called a strategy in NLP. How to get from one place to another is a strategy, and it's incredibly similar to the whole philosophy and idea of a servitor, except in the case of a servitor, the strategy is outside of you. It's also embedded in your own nervous system, of course, because you created it, but it's outside of you when it's doing its thing. Similarly, modeling is incredibly similar to invocation. If I want to become, more compassionate, I might invoke a certain aspect of the Buddha and meditate on that for a while. And if I want to become hardier and tougher, I might invoke Mars and meditate on him for a while. And what you're doing is you're modeling there. You're actually taking a sort of an archetype of the qualities you want, and you're making it personally yours. And there will be a whole bunch of questions you will ask during that, no doubt, as to how you can conquer it, and inspirations perhaps from the god as to how you can come closer to that. Does that make sense?
No, it makes sense. And yeah, I've definitely benefited in the past from NLP and, of course, self-hypnosis. It's just altering your state of mind, like psychedelics and everything. And in your book, you talk about something that is extremely important and most Westerners still can't grasp or don't do well, and that's just simple breath work, right? Sometimes the best you can do in life is just breathe.
Breath work is such a powerful thing. I mean, when I was, back in the late 70s, I was doing the basic Chaos Magic training program that you get in Liber MMM, as we called it then, from Pete Carroll's book Liber Null. And, part of that is just doing pranayama. It's just sitting, learning how to sit still. And once you're sitting still, learning how to pay attention to the current of your breath. And if you want, alter the current, but maybe just observing it. And I've done all that. But then in the early 90s, 1991, I went to a big Chaos Magic meeting in Austria, and one of the people presenting there was Lionel Snell, aka Ramsey Dukes, one of the great magical thinkers of the modern day. He'd been getting quite a lot out of rebirthing breathwork, so that's basically what he presented as his workshop and seminar for this residential retreat. And so we had 30 of us laid down in this medieval room, laid on blankets, eyes closed, doing this intense breathing, and just 20 minutes of it. And I went through this roller coaster of emotions, and I thought, oh my God, all I've done is breathe. What's going on here? This is incredible. I'm going to learn about this. So when I got back to England, I found a local breathwork practitioner. The brand of breathwork he used was rebirthing. Of course, the other main brand is holotropic. It's the same technology, but done in different contexts slightly. So I went along to this rebirthing practitioner for a few months, and he helped me work through a very difficult time, an emotionally difficult time. And it was such a powerful experience, and it was so positive, so limitlessly positive as well. So I thought, okay, I need even more of this. So I had to get a professional qualification here. So I spent a year doing a professional course in Vivation, which was a brand that branched off of rebirthing breathwork. That's again the same technology. And I did that and, qualified as a practitioner, and it was terrific. I just really love giving breathwork sessions. People get so much out of it.
Oh, I agree. I can't even explain the benefits that meditation has helped me with. I just, like you said about magic, I just feel more in the moment, more embedded in life.
I think doing breathwork was a good introduction to meditation for me, because I tried to meditate but found it kind of boring, basically, which of course is part of the point.
Right, yeah. The monkey mind, facing the monkey mind.
Oh God, yeah. Just want to get and do something else, please. But with breathwork, connected breathwork, you're on this roller coaster ride. It's fabulous. There's so much going on that you can't possibly be bored. I challenge anybody to feel bored if they're doing fast full breathing. But so that was a bit of an introduction to the attitude of meditation, which is, of course, not doing. It's about letting stuff happen. So I had years of introduction to that before I found myself a proper meditation teacher and started doing sitting meditation that didn't involve intense breath work. And yes, it is a similar attitude, isn't it? It's not doing. It's learning how to not do.
Exactly. Yes, and not have expectations. Just like you said,
yeah.
let the magic or let the gods talk to you first. Let your soul decide what's going on, not your ego for a change.
Yeah. It's changed, doesn't it? To leave behind that shattering self.
Yeah. Well, as we get to the end, David, I guess a twofold question. What would you like the audience to get out of your book, Primal Chaos? And where can they find the book and more about you online or anywhere else?
Oh, well, I think I sent you the link for the Amazon site for the book, and it only went on there last night, so it might be another day or so before it's working outside of the UK. But yeah, you've got that.
Once this interview is live, it will. There'll be plenty of links. Yeah, exactly. Trusted Jeff Bezos.
My own main. I'll find you a link for my own main outward-facing stuff, like my newsletter and my website and so forth. But to go back to your original question there about what would I like people to get out of Primordial Chaos, really an understanding of magic and its place in the world now. Looking at the history of chaos magic, which there's a good deal of in that book, and looking at the way that chaos magic isn't just some fad that came and went. It's it's a way of living that enables you to get the most out of life by living intensely magically, but still with a critical faculty intact. So you don't just become another, conspiracy fool. But I hope people get some idea of what magic's about from it.
Certainly, and I agree. Magic is important, and your book certainly answers a lot of questions. And like I said, there's something for everyone that they'll find useful. Again, from breath work to self-hypnotism to runes to gematria. Your book takes the audience on a journey, and as I often say, sometimes we don't choose books choose us, and this is a good book to be chosen from. So, and for the audience, I will have on the show notes, whether you're listening on your favorite podcast provider or on YouTube or Rockfin or any of those old platforms, I will have links to both David's book and his website. But we are at the end of this journey. David, thank you very much for coming on Aeon Byte and discussing your book, Primordial Chaos, Writings and Rituals Then and Now.
Thank you, Miguel. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you.
On a cold, dark night, there was someone killed 'neath the town hall light. Just a few at the scene, and they all did agree that the man who ran looked a lot like me. Well, the judge said, son, what's your alibi? If you're somewhere else, well, you don't have to die. And I spoke not a word, though it meant my life. I'd been in the arms of my best friend's wife. She walks these hills in a long black veil. She visits my grave when the night winds wail. Nobody knows, Lord, nobody sees, nobody knows but me. Well, the scaffold's high and eternity nears, and she stands in the crowd and sheds not a tear. But sometimes at night, where the cold wind moans in a long black veil, she cries all over my bones. She walks these hills in a long black veil. She visits my grave when the night winds wave. Nobody knows love, nobody sees, nobody knows but me. Nobody